Hello and welcome to A Sunny Book Nook. Today I need to get rid of some books, so I'm going to be bringing you through the stack of books that I'm going to sell or donate. I just wanted to interject in this unhaul video that this video is actually brought to you today by my sponsor, Pango Books. Pango Books is an app that allows you to sell and buy used books, and it's really easy. All you have to do is take a picture of your book, scan the ISBN number on the back or the barcode, and upload it, name your price. You can sell your book, and it's also very easy to buy books on the app as well. The book that I'm going to be selling on Pango Books, or I have already posted and made my profile on, is Lapvona by Tessa Moshfegh, because I already have another copy. So I have two copies, might as well sell this one. And it's a brand new hardcover. If you want to buy this from me, check out the Pango Books link in the description. I do have a code for you. I hope that you guys download and use Pango Books if you think that is something that would be useful for you, because new books can be very expensive and they are only getting more expensive. So used books could be a really good way for you to build your collection if you do want to own the books that you read. I found it really easy to set up a profile, take a picture, scan the ISBN, and name my price. And I think it would be very easy for you guys to use as well if that is something that sounds useful to you. But thank you so much to Pango Books for sponsoring this video, and back to the unhaul. The first book I want to get rid of and unhaul is The Other Americans by Leila Lalami. This book was a book that I read for some sort of like reading group I was in a year or two ago, and so I have some like annotations and stuff inside it just so I could have something to discuss and point out in detail in the discussions. But it was just very mediocre for me. It was like a 3-star book. It wasn't that compelling narratively, because on the surface I think it could have been interesting, but it just didn't really do much for me. It's this Moroccan immigrant family, and we're following the daughter whose father recently died in like a car accident, and it's under suspicious circumstances, so she gets pulled into like an investigation regarding the suspicious accident. And we also follow some perspectives and points with this police officer who is semi-involved in the investigation, I believe, who then is like romantically involved with the daughter. And it's just like we kind of jump through at different perspectives, but it's just not that compelling to me. I didn't really enjoy it. Oh, and also there's this like old high school friend that our main character, the daughter named Nora, becomes sort of romantically involved with, named Jeremy, who's an Iraq war veteran. And so I think it's like trying to discuss issues of imperialism and race and the implications that has for people in like the diaspora, and then how they interact with Americans and I don't know. There's also like the family aspect of it, in which there's the question of the inheritance and the restaurant that they, like the small business that the family has. And our main character Nora is like a jazz composer, and she didn't go into what her parents wanted her to do. But I don't know, I just feel like it's a played out story that I guess I feel okay that I read it, but it's just not a book that I want to hang on to, so it's going in my unhaul pile. The next paperback book I want to unhaul is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I read this book for like a thriller reading vlog I did a year or two ago, and I'll link that in the cards, and I thought this was mid. I don't know. I feel like a lot of thrillers, because they don't have to rely on strong writing, if it's not like literary, it sort of just has to rely on shock value, right, and twists and stuff. I don't know if that type of writing is suited to me as a reader, I guess, and it's just something that I don't want to hang on to it. I don't really have any particular sentimental association with it, and it wasn't that good of a book to me, and it's like so hyped, I guess. And I think like the twist at the end, it was interesting, and I did end up getting through it, but it just wasn't the most it wasn't the best thriller that I've read, I don't think. And just the mystery element and everything, it didn't do much for me, I guess. So it's another mediocre read that I don't have any particular issue with. It just didn't stick with me in a particular way that I want my shelves to reflect my reading taste, I guess. All right, and now I have another paperback I want to unhaul, and that is Gingerbread by Helen Oyeyemi. I have her other book, White is for Witching, which I also read for a class, and it's very annotated and marked up. But this book is in pretty pristine condition because it's just not that interesting to me. I mean, I think Oyeyemi is a really smart writer and a very talented one, obviously, but I don't think when I read this a couple years back, I was in the right headspace to fully try to digest or understand her concepts, because this is sort of a retelling of Hansel and Gretel, essentially, but it also has to do with, I think, Caribbean folklore. It's set in London, and there's this family recipe for gingerbread. It's very magical realism. It feels very whimsical, but it's also quite dark, I think, and I just don't have that much to say or think about this in terms of when I read it. I don't have any lingering thoughts. It's just not something I want to keep on my shelves. So yeah, I'm gonna pass it on to someone who might enjoy it better. All right, the next book I want to unhaul is Your House Will Pay by Steph Cha. This is a literary thriller that follows this Asian American, I think Korean American pharmacist who is sort of the good girl daughter, and her sister is more the rebellious type who's a writer or tries to work in Hollywood, and she has her, hipster white boyfriend who's also a screenwriter, and she's more involved in the social justice scene, I think in LA. But essentially we're following these alternating perspectives of these two young people in their families, in the legacy that their families have left behind. Grace, the Korean daughter pharmacist, is sheltered and not really tapped into shit, and basically in the 90s it sort of follows the Korean American and Black race riots and the aftermath of that, and it's sort of a fictional account of these two people. One is this Black man who has experienced a lot of violence and death in his family due to the aftermath of these riots, and he's sort of sick and tired of the social justice organizing and language around that shit. He wants to move on with his life, and Grace obviously doesn't really know much of anything, and so their lives sort of intersect as family secrets get shown. But yeah, I think it was an interesting attempt at trying to examine Asian and Black intercommunity racial struggles in LA, particularly, especially in the aftermath of the 90s, because this is set during contemporary times, and it's, looking at it through the lens of people who are not at the forefront of any sort of movement, in fact are very oppositional to it because they have been previously involved, or because they are directly tied to family members who are involved with perhaps perpetrating the incidents. So I thought this was well written and solidly written, but I just don't think that I got as much from this book as it wanted me to take from it, I guess, because I don't think I came into the story with enough of a lack of background understanding, I guess. I don't know, because I've studied Asian American history in the late 20th century to some degree, and so, I don't know, it just wasn't giving what I wanted it to deliver. I guess it didn't really pack as much of a punch as I think it wanted to, for me personally, but I think that it would be a really interesting read to someone else, which is why I'm passing it on. But again, most of these books are not books that I hate, they're just mediocre books. So this definitely falls into that category, I would say. The next book I want to talk about is The Library of Legends by Janie Chang. This book is a historical fantasy set in 1930s China, I believe. It's when Japan invades Nanjing, and it's about this young girl who is at a university, and she and her university classmates have to flee. There is a magical realism element to it embroiled within the political conflict of war, and the fact that a lot of these students are involved in various political groups that are getting persecuted by whatever given government. Of course, there's the threat of invasion, and then there's the budding Communist Party of China and the young student organizers who are trying to get more people involved, and the Library of Legends as like a site of folklore, essentially. I think that historical fantasy set in a particular time that sort of reimagines a specific time period, like 1937, Japanese invasion of China, it's really hit or miss for me, and I think this book was just mediocre. It's the type of book that I think if you enjoyed something like The Poppy War but wanted something less high fantasy, more literary, you would enjoy this, but I didn't enjoy The Poppy War, and I don't want to finish that trilogy because I thought The Poppy War was fine. It didn't really hit me in any particular way. I think this book was kind of similar in that. I am going to be passing this one on, but I do recommend it. I just don't think that it made a lasting impact on me in the way that I want books that I own to do, Next, I have some nonfiction paperbacks I want to get rid of, and first is Gender Fluid by Sally Hines. This is a really beautiful book with like a certain structure that you can read all the big text and all the images or the smaller text, but because this is like a primer for the 21st century, it's a lot of compilation of like knowledge and history about LGBTQ, like identity, history, culture, in a way that is supposed to be like an overview, and it was a good introduction for me when I was a few years younger, but I think I've moved past the need for this, and I think it would be better for someone else to pick it up. And yeah, I think I've recommended this before in like nonfiction or LGBTQ recommendation videos, so I do stand by that, but this is not a book that I seek to revisit, and I think it's very beautiful, so I do want to pass it on and unhaul it. And then I have Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. This book is a really like extensive historical analysis of slavery and Reconstruction and civil rights and sort of just like the history of Black American struggle and life. And it was good. It was a good historical account, but I don't think it provided me enough detail or analysis or critical thought because of its expansiveness. I think this is better suited to someone who doesn't study American history and, read American history journals, academic journals and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I also read this a few years ago, and I think I've moved beyond the need for a book like this, so it would be better served for someone else, because I think it's a very fat, very thick introduction, but it still, I think, is an introduction. I think it's more of a introductory text than it is an extensive one, or thorough one. Like, it very much examines and constructs and argues how anti-Blackness is the foundation of America and how it's tied to capitalism and police violence and the state and all of this. But I just don't need to have this particular book on my shelves when, again, I feel like I've moved beyond the need for it, I guess. But it is very useful, and I do still think that there are chapters in here that were very powerful in conveying the message that it sought to convey, but it just wasn't that memorable to me in a way that other anti-capitalist Black perspectives on history and analysis it's not as enlightening as other things I've read, I guess. So yeah, I will be handing this one off. And now moving on to my hardcover books that I want to get rid of. The first book I want to talk about is Tokyo Uno Station by Yu Miri. This book is very beautiful, okay? Like, I'm not going to deny that. And that's why I bought it, because it's so pretty as a design. And we're following this ghost who's haunting Tokyo Uno Station, and he it's just like about his day-to-day life, haunting this stop and like him reminiscing on his alive life. And I felt that it was sort of meandering, and it's a translated literary novel, and it's very short, obviously. So, I don't know, it just didn't really pack a punch for me personally. I'm not interested enough in like Japan or Japanese culture and the landscape of it for this to be interesting to me in a particular way, I guess. So I want to pass it on to someone who would enjoy this more and get to have this beautiful book on their shelves that they thoroughly enjoy. So yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's a solid book. It's just not, again, it's just not one I want to keep. And next I have The Last True Poets of the Sea by Julia Drake. I have recommended this book in videos before and in comparison videos. My lesbian book to movie recommendation, I'll link it in the cards. I talk about this book. And it has this sort of melancholic, queer, coming of age feeling to it that a lot of YA contemporaries seek to embody, but this one feels a little bit more like literary than some more juvenile sort of styles of writing I've experienced in this genre. And so I think it's solid, but it's just not a book that I want to keep on my shelves. It lacked the touch of whimsy or humor that I think is what allows me to enjoy YA books, but it's a very beautiful book, and it was in a long line of like queer YA books I was trying to read at the time when I did pick this up. So I don't regret it. It's just not a book I want to hang on to because I don't have any, I don't know, I'm just not like sentimentally attached to it, I suppose. And, you know, like I'm a Cancer, like I like being sentimentally attached to the items that I own, and this is just not one of them, I would say. It's not a book I really want to revisit, and now that I've already talked about it and recommended it in specific contexts on this channel, I just don't think it's necessary to hang on to it anymore. But I do think it's a solid bisexual female main character, teenage, lost child, coming of age story. Did I already say coming of age? How many times have I said that? But it's solid. Again, that's why I'm passing it on. Alrighty. The next hardcover book I have here is one that I haven't read, and it's because I have 2 copies of it, and that is Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis. This book, I really don't know what it's about because I haven't read it, but again, I have 2 copies of it, so I'm just going to be handing this one off. I think Lindsay Ellis said something kind of questionable on Twitter a couple years back. I respect her as a creator. I think I was a YouTube viewer a few years back and consistently watch a lot of her stuff on repeat. And so I'm interested in reading her shit, but I don't need 2 copies, I guess. And I've had these 2 copies on my shelves for like a year or 2 now, and I just need to really get to it, but I just need to get rid of this book. And a lot of my friends who are in my real life don't really read that much science fiction, and I think this is within that genre, so I'm just going to hand it off. And finally, the last book I'm unhauling and giving to the thrift shop or whatever is a book that I actually despise, and it sucks because I have the hardcover copy because I really love the author's other book, and that is Girl, Serpent, Thorn. I loved Melissa Bashardoust's other book, Girl Made of Snow and Glass, another YA sapphic fantasy. This book I found so stupid. Okay, and the other thing is that it had potential up to the halfway point, and then the second half of the novel, I was like, you're making the stupidest choices possible for the point of accelerating the plot, when on a logical level, the things that you as a character should be doing and what I know you should be doing, what you know you should be doing, is not what's happening here for the arbitrary reason of progressing the plot, and that's frustrating to me. But we're following this princess who has been like hidden away from the kingdom because she has this terrible, terrible magical power and secret, which is that her touch is poisonous. So whoever she touches will like die. And there's this prisoner that's in the dungeons that she's talking to. It's like a bisexual love triangle thing again. It's, I don't know, not that memorable. The only thing I remember about this is that I did not really like it. So I will be passing it on, and I just feel so bad because it's a beautiful hardcover edition of this book. I knew I was going to get this book as it released, like as soon as I could, because I loved her other books so much. But alas, this did not meet my expectations whatsoever, so handing her off. Those are all the books I am hoping to unhaul very soon. And thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on social media or support me on Patreon or any of this other shit by clicking the links in my description. But that's all I have for you today, and I will see you in my next video, hopefully. Bye.